Alien girl finds his diary. Wait, you dream about me? Like that? The flickering bioluminescence of the archive tower cast long, dancing shadows, turning ancient data spires into skeletal giants. Ethan, a human adrift on a world that saw him as an anomaly, felt a familiar ache in his gut. Not hunger, but the gnawing uncertainty of a life spent perpetually off-kilter. He'd survived a ship full of ghosts, a malfunctioning cryo chamber, and then the bewildering mercy of the Xylani, a species whose very presence hummed with an elegant, alien logic he couldn't quite grasp. Now, he was here, in the heart of their subterranean archive towers, a place of hushed reverence and endless knowledge, being observed. Your species records are unrefined, Zalara stated, her voice a low thrum that vibrated in the stone floor. She stood before a luminous console, her back to him, digits tracing ancient glyphs. Her form was slender, almost ethereal, yet he'd seen the underlying strength in the taut line of her shoulders, the subtle ripple of muscle beneath the dark fabric of her ritualistic robes. Her head crest, typically held rigid and proud, was momentarily relaxed, the intricate tendrils near her temples faintly glowing with a soft internal light, an unconscious tell of concentration he'd learned. He'd seen her fight, once, a brief skirmish against a rogue energy beast in the outer sectors, and the memory was a jolt of raw power. She had moved with a precision that bordered on grace, a dancer of death. He leaned against a cool data spire, resisting the urge to shift his weight. Unrefined? You mean we don't catalog every bad dinner decision or questionable life choice in a public forum? Xylara paused, then turned, her movement slow, deliberate. Her large, dark eyes, multifaceted and deep, held no humor. They were pools of ancient grief, he sometimes thought, or perhaps just endless duty. Your diary is a personal log of emotional projections. It details sensory experiences, even those not physically manifested. Her gaze sharpened, resting on his face. These dreams, they are peculiar. He swallowed, a dry rasp in his throat. He'd forgotten about the compad he'd been using as a personal log, a relic from his derelict transport. Its encryption had been a joke to Xylani scanners. It had been a lifeline to sanity, a way to process the sheer, overwhelming alienness of this place. And yes, he'd filled it with his dreams, not just the nightmares of his past, but the strange, vivid fragments of his new reality, particularly those involving the inscrutable Zalara. His cheeks felt hot. Look, it's just a way to process things. You guys are a lot to take in. A lot to take in, she repeated, her voice flat, as if tasting the words. Your internal monologue is verbose, and your humor, as you term it, often seems to contradict the gravity of your situation. The archive's air grew thick, the faint, ozone scent of ancient knowledge mingling with the metallic tang of his rising panic. He was a survivor, yes, but he was also a man who occasionally made light of impending doom because the alternative was screaming into the void. Just then, a klaxon wailed, a jarring, mechanical shriek that ripped through the archive's usual tranquility. The bioluminescent light flickered, dying in sections, plunging the vast space into an oppressive gloom, broken only by emergency beacons. A low, guttural roar echoed from somewhere deep within the tower, a sound that was distinctly not Xylani. Zalara's eyes narrowed, the tendrils of her crest pulsing with an alarmed glow. Her hand instinctively went to the intricate hilt-like device at her hip, a ritual weapon he'd only seen displayed, never drawn. Intrusion, she stated, her voice now taut with a different kind of intensity. The Grow. They have breached the outer wards. The ancient enemy, the source of her species' most enduring trauma, was here. And Ethan, the peculiar human with the embarrassing dreams, was about to be caught in a crossfire. The subterranean archive towers, usually a bastion of quiet contemplation, now thrummed with a frantic energy. Emergency lighting cast stark clinical shadows, revealing Zalara's face, etched with a grim determination. The Grow, she'd called them, ancient rivals, he gathered, whose only known goal was to erase every cultural trace of the Zalara. Their presence here, in the holiest of their knowledge repositories, was an existential threat. Ethan, accustomed to relying on his wits in a sturdy multi-tool, felt acutely vulnerable. He was a man of open spaces, not suffocating, labyrinthine tunnels designed for creatures far more agile than he was. "Stay close," Zalara commanded, her voice low and urgent as she moved with startling swiftness towards a fortified access hatch. Their sensory arrays are dulled by the ancient energy field of these deeper levels, but their physical strength is immense. Do not engage unless directly threatened. Your multi-tool is insufficient. He patted the utility belt containing his meager array of earthbound devices. It's got a pretty good torque wrench. You'd be surprised. The humor felt thin, even to him, but it was his only defense. She didn't respond, her focus entirely on the ancient lock mechanism of the hatch. Grunting, she applied pressure, her slender form belying impressive strength, and the heavy door hissed open onto a narrow service tunnel, dark and dusty. "This route is known only to the Archon priesthood," she explained, gesturing him forward. "It should provide temporary cover, but the Graal are guided by their hunger. They will seek out resonance." "Resonance?" he echoed, scrambling through the opening. "Like good vibes?" She paused, her multifaceted eyes meeting his for a split second. "The accumulated spiritual and intellectual energy of our ancestors. It is food to them. They wish to consume our history." Her voice, usually so controlled, held a tremor of something akin to revulsion. This wasn't just an invasion, it was an desecration. He felt a sudden, unexpected pang of understanding. To lose one's history, one's very soul, was a fear he intimately understood, having floated for cycles in the void, a ghost ship his only tether to a forgotten past. As they navigated the cramped, winding tunnels, the sounds of distant battle echoed through the stone. Explosions, the guttural roars of the Groll, and the high-pitched, metallic screams of Zalani energy weapons. They moved with a shared, unspoken rhythm, a strange dance of mutual survival. She would occasionally illuminate a path with a focused beam from her wrist-mounted device, revealing collapsed sections of tunnel, ancient, forgotten mechanisms, and even the skeletal remains of what looked like long-extinct Xylani fauna. "We must reach the central data core," Xylara said, her breath coming in slight, controlled puffs. "If it falls, our entire collective memory is consumed. We become a species without a past." He remembered his own memories of Earth, fragmented and distant, but vital. "So, no pressure then?" He risked a quick glance at her, the soft internal glow of her crest now dimmed, almost hidden by the shadows. He wondered what her personal memories felt like, what ancient knowledge she held within her. She was a cold tactician with buried grief, he'd read in his own clumsy analysis. And in the quiet intensity of their shared flight, he felt the weight of that grief, a burden beyond his comprehension. The Graal were not just an enemy, they were a wound reopened, deep and festering. His role, it seemed, had just escalated from curious anomaly to an improbable, if inadequate, bodyguard of an entire civilization's soul. The air grew thick with a metallic tang, not of ozone, but something acrid and organic. It was the scent of the Groll, an almost palpable hunger emanating from the darkness ahead. Solara slowed, pressing herself against a rough-hewn wall, her multifaceted eyes scanning the gloom. They are close. Their sensory perception here is still limited, but their hunger guides them. Her voice was barely a whisper. We must pass through resonance chamber. It filters the ambient energy of the archives, but it also amplifies certain emanations. Ethan felt a prickle of unease. Emanations? Like my embarrassing dreams? He half joked, half feared. The very thought made his skin crawl. She ignored the comment, her focus on a barely visible aperture in the wall. This passage is for maintenance drones. Not for us, but it is our only way forward without direct engagement. You are larger than Xylani. It will be a tight fit. He squeezed through the narrow opening, grunting as his shoulders scraped against the rough rock. Xylara followed, her lithe form sliding through with surprising ease. They emerged into a circular chamber, its walls shimmering with faint, ethereal light, like a nebula trapped in stone. Strange, pulsating conduits snaked across the floor, feeding into a central humming pillar of pure energy. This was the resonance chamber. As they entered, a strange wave washed over him. Not physical, but emotional. He felt a profound sadness, ancient and bone-deep, followed by a surge of desperate hope, then a flash of stark, cold rage. It was like experiencing a lifetime of emotions in a single disorienting heartbeat. He stumbled, catching himself on Zilara's arm. Her skin beneath the thin fabric of her sleeve felt like cool silk over taut muscle. "The chamber," she murmured, her voice strained. "It draws upon the residual resonance of all who pass through. It amplifies emotional echoes." Her glowing tendrils pulsed erratically now, a frantic dance of inner turmoil. He saw it then, a flicker of raw pain in her usually guarded eyes. This chamber wasn't just amplifying ambient energy. It was peeling back the layers of her own carefully constructed defenses. A guttural growl echoed from the far end of the chamber, closer than before. A massive, multi-limbed growl, its carapace mottled and chitinous, its maw dripping with luminescent ichor, lumbered into view. Its single central eye glowed with an unsettling intelligence. It had found them. Xylara's hand flew to her hip, drawing the ritual weapon. It wasn't a blaster, but an elegant, curved blade, infused with a soft, inner luminescence. "It is faster than I anticipated," she breathed, her stance shifting, muscles coiling. "Its hunger is strong." He saw the fear, raw and undeniable, in her eyes. Not fear for herself, he realized, but for the archive, for the knowledge she was sworn to protect. He remembered his own desperate fights for survival, the primal surge of adrenaline. "Look, if this thing's hungry for resonance," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "maybe we give it something it doesn't expect." He met her gaze, a desperate idea forming. A distraction, something loud, something human. He pulled a flashbang grenade from his belt, a relic from his transport security locker. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. "Trust me?" She stared at the grenade, then at him, her multifaceted eyes flickering. The growl let out another roar, taking a ponderous step forward. Time was running out. Without a word, she nodded. A minute, almost imperceptible, dip of her head. He had no idea what her resonance felt like, but in that moment, he felt a shared, terrible desperation, a kinship forged in the shadow of annihilation. He pulled the pin. The flashbang exploded with a blinding white light and a deafening report echoing off the shimmering walls of the resonance chamber. The girl recoiled, its single eye spasming, emitting a high-pitched shriek of disorientation. Zilara moved, a blur of elegant fury, her glowing blade carving through the air, finding the softer joints in the creature's armored hide, but the growl was immense. Its reflexes dulled, but its brute force undeniable. It swung a massive limb, catching Zilara mid-strike, sending her flying, crashing against the central energy pillar. The force of the impact made the entire chamber hum ominously. "Xylar!" Ethan yelled, adrenaline flooding his system. He saw her slumped against the pillar, her head crest glowing erratically, the internal light flickering like a dying flame. Her blade lay several feet away. The growl, recovering, turned its attention to him, its immense bulk now focused on the human anomaly. He was, to them, another source of resonance, a different flavor of ancient memory. He knew he couldn't fight it. Not with a multi-tool and a prayer, but he could delay it. He darted around a pulsating conduit, drawing the creature's attention, buying precious seconds. He could hear Xylara's labored breathing, see the faint shimmer of her internal light struggling against the oppressive dark. He needed to get her out, or at least get her weapon. As he dodged a sweeping claw, he saw Xylar push herself up, groaning. Her movements were slow, her usual precision gone. The blow had stunned her, perhaps worse. She reached for her blade, but her arm fell limp. He felt a surge of panic, a helpless rage. He was just a human, a survivalist, not a warrior, but he couldn't let her fall. Suddenly, a strange sensation washed over him again, amplified by the chamber's field. Not just emotion, but images. He saw Xyler as a child, small and terrified, clutching a ceremonial blade as the Grohl had ravaged her homeworld, consuming the precious resonance of her ancestors. He felt her grief, a bottomless well of sorrow, and a cold, burning resolve to never let it happen again. He saw the face of her mentor, her family, fading into the consuming void. It was her grief that made her a cold tactician, her loss that fueled her duty. He was seeing her past, not just feeling it. It was an involuntary empathy-based memory merging, a raw, unfiltered download of her soul. He staggered, overwhelmed, but the brief connection solidified something in him. He understood her now, not just as an alien, but as a being burdened by immense trauma. He had to protect her. He saw her eyes, unfocused, and in their depths, a recognition that she too was experiencing the merge, seeing fragments of his past, the cold vacuum of space, the faces of his lost crew, the silent terror of isolation. The Grohl lunged, its maw open, dripping. Ethan reacted on instinct, throwing himself forward not at the creature, but towards Xylera's blade. He scooped it up, the hilt warm against his palm, strangely fitting. The blade pulsed with light, responding to his touch, humming with an alien energy. He pivoted, not a fighter but a desperate man. He didn't know how to wield it, but he knew how to use it. He drove the glowing blade into a crack in the Grohl's chitinous leg. Leveraging his weight and the weapon's inherent energy, the Grohl shrieked, a different sound now of pain, not hunger. It stumbled, giving them precious seconds. The core, Xylera gasped, pointing a trembling digit towards an access panel on the energy pillar. Its weakness is exposed when it feeds. We must sever its connection. His hand still clenched around the blade. Ethan felt an echo of Xylera's resolve, a strange blend of his human desperation and her alien duty. The blade hummed in his hand, a living extension of their shared raw desperation. He was no warrior, but for her, for the impossible, overwhelming weight of her grief and the history she carried, he would try. The Grohl, wounded and enraged, swiped its remaining claw, a blur of chitin and fury. Ethan barely evaded, the wind of its passage ruffling his hair. He still held Xylera's ritual blade, its soft, internal glow a strange comfort in his hand. He wasn't trained for this, but his own desperate fight for survival on a derelict ship had taught him a primal lesson. When you have nothing left, you fight with everything you are. Xylera, leaning heavily against the energy pillar, her internal light still flickering, pushed herself upright. Her multifaceted eyes, though clouded with pain, held a sharp, focused intensity. The main conduit, she rasped, pointing a shaking digit. Its energy supply is tied to the central data core. If we overload it, it will expel the Grohl, but it will also disrupt the core's resonance field. Disrupt how? He asked, lunging to avoid another sweep of the Grohl's claw. Permanent damage? Temporary disorientation. A necessary sacrifice. We must sever the connection. Her voice was weak, but firm. My blade is keyed to the conduit's energy signature. It will overcharge it. He looked at the glowing blade in his hand, then at the massive Grohl between them and the conduit. So, I'm your human-shaped conduit key? He muttered, a desperate laugh bubbling up. The sheer absurdity of the situation, the impossible burden of being humanity's unlikely champion, was almost comical. Xylera didn't respond to his humor. She pushed herself forward, her form swaying. My strength? It is insufficient. I must guide you. Her tendrils pulsed, reaching out, not physically but telepathically. He felt a soft, cool pressure behind his eyes, a gentle prodding, guiding his movements. It was a new, unsettling form of intimacy, a direct link into her tactical mind. The Grohl roared, sensing their intent, lumbering forward with surprising speed. Ethan, guided by Zalara's mental instructions, moved with a newfound, almost unnatural precision. He dodged, weaved, the blade in his hand, no longer an alien object, but an extension of their combined will. He felt Solara's calculated movements, her precise understanding of the growl's attack patterns, flowing directly into his own reactions. It was exhilarating and terrifying, a strange dance of two disparate beings, momentarily unified against a common foe. He found an opening, a blind spot in the Groll's peripheral vision. Zalara's mental prod intensified, urging him forward. He plunged the glowing blade into the central conduit, not with brute force, but with a precise, almost surgical motion. The conduit hummed, then shrieked, glowing blindingly as the energy surged, overloading. A wave of raw, uncontrolled resonance erupted, slamming into the Groll. The creature screamed, a guttural sound of pure agony, its form shimmering, then dissipating, forced back through the rift it had opened. The immediate threat was gone. The chamber fell silent, save for the hum of the overcharged conduit and the faint ringing in Ethan's ears. He stood, breathing heavily, the ritual blade still in his hand, its glow slowly fading. Zalara collapsed, not to the floor, but against him, her slender form trembling. He instinctively wrapped an arm around her, supporting her weight. Her skin, where their bodies touched, was cool, almost cold. Yet beneath it, he felt the frantic beat of her inner pulse. Her tendrils, now dimmed, brushed against his cheek, and he felt a lingering echo of her grief, her fear, and the profound exhaustion that now settled over her. The memory merge, the shared trauma, had broken down something between them. He had seen her raw vulnerability, and she, unknowingly, had seen his. This wasn't just survival, it was something else, something deeply unsettling and undeniably intimate. Their forced proximity had created a bond, not of his choosing, but now undeniable. The immediate threat of the Groll was gone, but the aftermath of their desperate action hung heavy in the air. The resonance conduit, having expelled the Groll, pulsed erratically, its light fluctuating between blinding white and dull amber. Zalara, still leaning against Ethan, slowly pushed herself away. Her multifaceted eyes, once clouded with pain, now held a chilling clarity. Her inner light, though still faint, had stabilized, signaling her recovery. But the intimacy of their shared survival, the telepathic merge, seemed to have been a temporary, tactical measure, now regretted. "The core is stable," she stated, her voice flat, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the vulnerability she had just shown. The Gruul were repelled. "Your flashbang and your human-shaped conduit key proved effective." She held out her hand for the ritual blade. Its glow had completely faded now, a dull, metallic object once more. He hesitated, then placed it in her palm. Her touch was brief, almost clinical. "We saved the archive," he said, trying to reestablish the momentary connection they'd had. "It was something else, wasn't it? The merge?" She stiffened, her tendrils retracting, pulling back from any lingering contact with him. It was a survival imperative, a temporary neural link, amplified by the resonance chamber's properties. Nothing more. Her words were like chipped ice, sharp and unyielding. "My records indicate your species forms attachments quickly, emotionally. This is not such an instance." He felt a pang of hurt, a familiar ache of rejection. He'd seen her grief, had felt it as his own. To dismiss it so readily felt like a betrayal. "Right. Just a convenient way for me to stick a glowing knife in the right place." He tried for his usual dry humor, but it fell flat. The sudden shift in her demeanor, the cold wall slamming back into place, was jarring. "Precisely," she confirmed, her gaze unwavering. "Your diary indicated an emotional response to my presence. Such projections are a distraction. My duty is to the Zerlani, to the archives, not to personal sentiment." He remembered his entries, the embarrassing vulnerability he'd poured into that digital space. His quiet fascination with her strength, her dedication, even her profound sadness. He dreamt of her, not like that, not in any explicit way, but of her shimmering form against the bioluminescent backdrop of this strange world, of the mysteries behind her eyes. Now she was throwing it back at him, weaponizing his unguarded thoughts. Suddenly, a team of Solani archons, elder priests with more elaborate crests and robes, entered the chamber through a previously hidden access panel. Their faces, usually serene, were etched with concern. "Archon Solara," one exclaimed. "The Groll, your report indicated a complete expulsion. And this, human?" Their gaze was a mixture of suspicion and curiosity as they settled on Ethan. Xylara turned to them, her posture straightening, her inner light now fully stabilized, radiating a cool, clear blue. The Groll are repelled. The core is intact. This, human, provided a necessary distraction. He is irrelevant to the direct engagement. Irrelevant. The word stung more than any insult. He had just plunged a glowing blade into a monster, saved her sacred archive, and shared a telepathic trauma download, and he was irrelevant. The cold tactician was back, her grief reburied, her emotional self-restraint firmly in place. He was nothing but a tool, used and discarded, but a part of him, the stubborn survivalist part, knew that something profound had happened, something she couldn't simply wish away. The residual effects of the resonance chamber, the shared memory, shimmered beneath his skin, a silent, undeniable bond. The Archons surveyed the resonance chamber, their internal lights pulsating with a mixture of relief and lingering concern. One of them, older, with a particularly intricate crest that shimmered like spun starlight, approached Xylara. "Archon Xylara, your success is noted. However, the resonance signature of the Groll remains a faint echo, and the power surge, it seems to have triggered a long dormant protocol. A binding, one we had hoped would never be invoked." His gaze shifted to Ethan, holding a new, unsettling weight. Xylara's shoulders stiffened, her multifaceted eyes widening almost imperceptibly. "The bond of core guardianship?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It cannot be. It requires a symbiotic pairing, a direct resonance between two souls chosen by the core's ancient power. It is a ritual of last resort, a safeguard against total obliteration." The Archon nodded gravely. "The Groll's attack coupled with the resonance surge initiated it. And the core's ancient programming has identified a resonance between you two." He gestured vaguely between Xylara and Ethan. "A new resonance, strong enough to forge the bond mark." Ethan felt a jolt of alarm. "Bond mark? What bond mark? And what's this symbiotic pairing nonsense?" He looked from the Archon to Xylara, whose face was now a mask of profound shock, her internal light flickering with an intensity that spoke of inner turmoil. "The bond of core guardianship," the Archon explained, his voice low, resonating with ancient authority, "is a sacred oath, a ritual binding designed to unite two beings with the core's own energy. It grants enhanced abilities in defense of the archive, but it also creates an unbreakable spiritual and genetic link. It is a commitment for life, and it cannot be undone." He paused, his gaze sweeping over them. "A bond mark will manifest on your skin, a symbol of your eternal union." Ethan's jaw dropped. "Eternal union? As in, till death do us part?" He looked at Xylara, whose internal light was now pulsing with a frantic, almost desperate rhythm. "You mean, we're married? By a sentient database?" Xylara finally found her voice, a strained, disbelieving whisper. "This is impossible. He is human. He has no understanding of our resonance, our ancestral recognition. He is a stranger, a tool, not a partner in the highest ritual of our people." Her carefully constructed facade of cold tactician shattered, revealing the desperate queen beneath, bound by an impossible fate. The grief he'd seen in her memory merge resurfaced, deeper and more profound now, laced with a new kind of despair. This wasn't just a duty. It was a sacred betrayal, a profound violation of her very being. The Archon held up a hand, silencing her. The core does not err, Archon Zalara. Its ancient programming has chosen. The resonance, however accidental, was sufficient. It recognizes only the strongest connections. You are bound, by its will, to this human. Your fate is now intertwined. Ethan felt a strange prickling sensation on his left wrist. Followed by a faint warmth, he looked down. A delicate, glowing pattern, like interwoven tendrils of light, was appearing on his skin, mirroring the faint, emerging mark on Zellera's right arm. A bond mark. A tattoo, but not a symbol of their forced, accidental union, burned onto their flesh by an ancient database. He was no longer just an anomaly. He was now irrevocably linked to a culture he barely understood, and to a woman who clearly despised the very idea of him. The external plot had not only escalated, it had entangled him in a cultural obligation he couldn't escape. His future, which had been a blank void, was now etched with a destiny he had never imagined. The glowing bond mark on Ethan's wrist pulsed, mirroring the faint, almost imperceptible shimmer on Zellera's arm. It was a tangible manifestation of their inescapable new reality. The Archon, observing their shared marks, nodded with grim satisfaction. The bond is forged. It is a sacred trust. Archon Zellera, you are now bound to the guardian of the core. He paused, then addressed Ethan, his multifaceted eyes holding an ancient, solemn wisdom. Human, you are now inextricably linked to the lineage of the first Archon, and to the protector of our collective resonance. Your fates are one. Zellera flinched, as if struck. The lineage of the first Archon? She repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. This stranger, bound to my ancestral line? The implications were clear. Her entire existence, her duty, her very identity, was now fundamentally altered by this unforeseen, involuntary connection. The grief he glimpsed earlier deepened, turning into a profound sorrow mixed with a simmering rage. He realized then that she wasn't just a cold tactician, she was a ritual-bound heiress, perhaps destined for a very different kind of union or no union at all. Ethan, for his part, felt a strange mix of disbelief and a morbid curiosity. So, what? Are we like co-CEOs of this place now? Do I get a uniform? His attempt at humor was an automatic defense mechanism, a way to cope with the absurdity. The Archon remained impassive. You are now a guardian. Your duties will be revealed. Your abilities will be amplified. Your resonance will be integrated with hers. He indicated Zellera. The core has chosen a powerful pairing for a reason. The growl will return, and the corrupted priesthood, whose betrayal allowed this initial breach, will continue their efforts to destabilize the Arcanate. Zellera's head snapped up. The Shadow Weavers, she spat, the name dripping with contempt. They orchestrated this? To force the bond of core guardianship and seize control of the archives? The pieces clicked into place. The political machinations behind the Groll attack now terrifyingly clear. Their aim was indeed to force this bond, but with one of their own, creating a puppet guardian, the Archon confirmed. Your accidental resonance, human, has disrupted their scheme, but they are desperate. They will try to sever your connection or corrupt it for their own ends. He looked at Zellera, truly looked at her. Her face, usually so composed, was a tableau of conflicting emotions, fury, despair, and a raw vulnerability he hadn't seen since the memory merge. She was not just bound to him, she was bound to the Archon lineage, a sacred and terrible responsibility. And now, she was shackled to a human, an outsider, a symbol of everything antithetical to her rigid cultural values. She was trapped, and he was the unwitting key to her prison. So, the bad guys want to kill us, or make us turn evil. And we're stuck together for life, Ethan summarized, running a hand through his hair. Sounds like a Tuesday. Zellera finally turned to him, her multifaceted eyes burning. You call this a Tuesday? This is the desecration of millennia of tradition, the burden of my ancestors now thrust upon you. Her voice was low, furious, raw. You, who dream of meaningless human attachments in your private logs, you cannot comprehend the weight of this bond. You cannot comprehend the purity required to maintain the core's resonance. He met her gaze, his own anger rising. Maybe I can't comprehend your millennia of tradition, but I do comprehend being screwed over by outside forces. And for the record, my dreams aren't meaningless. They're how I process a universe that keeps throwing me curveballs, like sentient glow marks and alien priestesses who can't stand the sight of me. The raw emotion in her voice, the true depth of her despair, had finally pierced his defenses. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her, about the impossible burden she carried, now amplified by his unwanted presence. He was her personal, cultural disaster, and they were both trapped. The archons, sensing the escalating tension, subtly shifted, creating a respectful distance. This was a private moment between the newly bonded, albeit a volatile one. Zylara's crest, a vibrant blue-green now, pulsed with her anger, the tendrils rippling like agitated water. Your dreams, she hissed, her voice a low, furious whisper. They spoke of an illogical longing, a desire for physical intimacy, for a joining. You project such base urges onto me. Ethan stared, bewildered. Wait, you read all of it? Even the weird stuff? His face flushed crimson. He'd been alone for so long, and his compad had been his confessional. His dreams, the vivid, often unsettling fragments of desire and longing that surfaced in sleep, had been an escape, a way to cope with the crushing isolation. He'd certainly never expected a stoic alien priestess to scroll through them like a gossip column. Your diary contained a detailed record of your neural activity during sleep cycles, Zylara stated, her voice still laced with a furious indignation, including what you term nightmares and wet dreams. Your subconscious fixates upon me, my form, my shimmering skin, as you so poetically described it, your longing for a softness beneath the ice. Is this your honor? To secretly covet that which is sacred? His jaw dropped. He had no idea what a wet dream was to a Zylani, but judging by her expression, it wasn't a compliment. Whoa, hold on a second. Those were dreams, not a strategic plan to covet anything. My brain does weird stuff when I'm asleep. It's like subconscious, you know? Not a declaration of intent. His voice was rising, a desperate attempt to defend himself against the sheer mortification. He'd thought his thoughts were private. He'd clearly overestimated alien privacy protocols. She took a step back, her eyes narrowing. You claim your mind generates such explicit scenarios without conscious intent? This is illogical. You cannot control your own thoughts, even in slumber? Her tone was accusatory, as if his dreams were a moral failing. The very concept of an unruly subconscious was utterly alien to her, rooted in a culture that valued emotional self-restraint as honor. Yes, exactly, he exclaimed, throwing his hands up in exasperation. Sometimes my brain just hits the random button. It's not a secret desire to ritualistically merge with you because you're a gorgeous alien priestess. It's just brain static. Sometimes it's about a pizza, sometimes it's about a giant squid with a top hat, and sometimes it's apparently about you. The pizza and squid detail felt desperate, but he had to inject some human absurdity into this. Her expression remained cold, unyielding. Your casual dismissal of such projections reveals a fundamental lack of self-control. Your brain static concerns me. The bond of core guardianship requires perfect clarity of resonance, an unclouded mind. My mind's perfectly clear. It's your translation matrix that needs a software update. He felt a surge of frustrated defiance. He was bonded to her, stuck with her for life, and she thought his subconscious was a security risk. This was going to be a long marriage. But beneath his irritation, a strange electric tension pulsed. The accusation, the sheer, Unadulterated mortification had somehow broken through their formal barrier. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were two individuals awkwardly, terribly, and irrevocably intertwined. The Archons, having observed the volatile exchange, intervened with a quiet, authoritative presence. "The bond is forged, regardless of your personal sentiments," the Elder Archon stated, his voice carrying an unshakable finality. "The purity of the core's resonance is paramount. Archon Zilara, you must instruct the human in the ways of the bond. His mind must be brought into alignment." Zilara's shoulders slumped, a subtle, almost imperceptible sign of defeat. She turned to Ethan, her multifaceted eyes still holding a fierce, reluctant defiance, but also a new, unsettling resignation. "You will accompany me to the resonant chambers," she commanded, her voice devoid of warmth. "There you will learn the rituals of alignment. The process is intimate. It involves the merging of senses, a direct connection to the core's resonance, and the channeling of ancestral memories. It is designed to ensure perfect synchronization between bonded guardians." Ethan's stomach clenched. "Intimate? Like, more intimate than my dream journal?" He eyed the Elder Archon, who merely stared back with an unnerving placidity. "Far more," Zilara replied, her voice low, a hint of something he couldn't quite decipher in its depths. "It is a joining of spirit, mind, internal energy. The Xylani have no need for physical intimacy, as your dreams describe it. Our deepest bonds are spiritual, forged through resonance. This ritual will ensure you can maintain the core's purity. It will allow me to guide your chaotic mind." They were led deeper into the archive towers, through chambers where glowing data spires pulsed with faint light, and past shimmering conduits that whispered with the echoes of ancient knowledge. The air grew cooler, infused with the subtle scent of mineral and raw energy. The resonant chambers were not grand or opulent, but starkly beautiful, crafted from polished black stone that seemed to absorb all light, save for the soft, diffused glow emanating from the central circular platform. "Step onto the platform," Zilara instructed, her voice crisp, her tendrils glowing a steady, cool blue. She moved with a purpose, shedding her outer robes to reveal a simpler, close-fitting undergarment of dark fabric, the faint bond mark on her arm now more visible. "This ritual is ancient. It predates our physical forms, evolving from the purest energy of our ancestral consciousness." He stepped onto the platform, its surface cool beneath his boots. It hummed faintly, a deep vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. Solara joined him, standing opposite, close enough that he could feel the subtle energy radiating from her. Her multifaceted eyes, usually so guarded, held a new, intense focus, an almost clinical determination. "We must initiate the pulse resonance sync," she explained, her voice lowered, almost a murmur now. "It will align our core energy fields, allow our memories to flow between us without the chaotic filter of your dream state. It is essential for the shared consciousness required of core guardians." She lifted her arms, her palms facing his, but not quite touching. "This is not a sexual act, human. It is a sacred merging, a duty." He could still feel the blush on his face from their earlier exchange, but the gravity of the moment, the sheer otherness of the ritual, pushed it aside. He raised his own hands, mimicking her posture. As their palms neared, a faint shimmer of energy arched between them, a cool, electric tingle. The bond mark on his wrist pulsed, growing brighter, mirroring hers. "Focus your mind," she instructed, her gaze locking with his. "Allow your internal energy to flow. Resist nothing. The sync will be overwhelming at first. It will strip away your defenses, revealing your innermost self." A wave of pure, unfiltered data slammed into him. Not just images, but feelings, thoughts, and memories. Zalara's. He saw her profound loneliness, her unwavering dedication, the crushing burden of her lineage. He felt the cold touch of ancestral grief, the weight of centuries of duty, the terrible isolation of her position. And then, he saw fragments of his own future, filtered through her perspective. Not a solitary journey, but one tied inextricably to hers, to the ancient heart of this planet. He felt the bond tighten, not just on his wrist, but deep within his chest, a profound connection that transcended physical touch. Then, the world around them dissolved. They weren't in the chamber anymore, but floating in an endless void, surrounded by shimmering constellations of light, memories, knowledge, entire lifetimes flowing through them. It was a dream merge prophecy, a shared hallucination, or perhaps something far more real. He saw their past, their current struggle against the shadow weavers, and then a terrifying glimpse of a future where their combined strength, their synchronized resonance, was the only thing standing between the core and utter annihilation. This wasn't just a duty, it was a destiny, woven by ancient forces. The pulse resonance sync was far more than a ritual. It was a profound, terrifying communion, forcing their two disparate souls into a single, intertwined existence. The dream merge prophecy swirled around them, an intoxicating torrent of information and emotion. Ethan felt Zolara's consciousness, bright and focused, guiding him through the maelstrom of shared memories and future visions. He saw the Shadow Weavers not just as a corrupted priesthood, but as a parasitic faction, feeding on the core's resonance, seeking to control Zolani consciousness itself. Their ultimate goal wasn't just power, but a complete rewriting of Zolani history, erasing the failures of their bloodline by literally consuming the truth. In the swirling images, he saw himself, not as a bumbling human, but as a pivotal figure, his chaotic, unbound human mind acting as a foil to Zolara's structured, ritual-bound one. They were two halves of a necessary whole. He saw visions of them, hand in hand, fighting through the collapsing archive towers, their bond mark glowing like a beacon, repelling the encroaching void. Suddenly, the visions intensified, shifting to a more immediate physical plane. He felt a profound surge of energy between them, a deep, resonant pulse that wasn't just spiritual, it was intensely physical, a wave of pure, concentrated sensation that overwhelmed his senses. His breath hitched. This wasn't a sexual act, she'd said, but his human body reacted with an undeniable primal need. The pressure between their palms, the hum of the platform, the raw data flowing through their bond mark, it all culminated in an impossible, internal release. He gasped, a guttural sound that surprised him. Zolara's crest flared, her multifaceted eyes wide with a similar, overwhelming shock. She hadn't anticipated this. Her species, she had stated, did not experience physical intimacy in the same way, but the raw, untamed force of their shared core resonance, amplified by the ancient ritual and their desperate need to bond, had created something new, something that transcended their individual biologies. It was a ritual merging through alien senses, a profound, unexpected union that had physically manifested in a way neither of them could have foreseen. As the waves subsided, leaving them trembling and breathless, the chamber slowly solidified around them, the void receded, and they were back on the black stone platform, their hands still raised, palms facing each other, the bond marks on their skin throbbing with a vibrant blue-green light. Zolara swayed, her tendrils now glowing with a furious, agitated pulse. She lowered her hands, pulling away from him as if burned. Her face was a mask of horrified disbelief, her multifaceted eyes fixed on him, searching for answers. What was that? She breathed, her voice raw, stripped of all composure. That was not in the ancient texts. The physical manifestation, it was uncontrolled. Ethan, still reeling from the unexpected intensity, tried to ground himself. It was a lot, he managed, his voice thick. It was like every atom in my body just went, yeah, that. He didn't have the words for it, couldn't explain the profound sense of completion, the terrifying, beautiful rush of connection. Her internal light flared, betraying her escalating distress. The core, it amplified something within your human physiology. Something primal. It forced a genetic imperative upon us. Her gaze fell to their glowing bond marks, then to his face, a dawning horror in her eyes. This cannot be. My lineage, it is pure, untainted by such base impulses. Base impulses? He echoed, a fresh wave of irritation washing over him. Look, I didn't ask for any of this, and I sure as hell didn't ask for my brain to just do that. But if your ancient core just decided to hotwire our DNA, maybe there's a reason for it. He realized, suddenly, the profound implications of her words. She was a ritual-bound heiress, defined by her pure bloodline. And now, she was not only bonded to an outsider, but potentially genetically altered by that bond in a profoundly physical way that violated every aspect of her cultural purity. The intimacy they had just shared, accidental and ritualistic as it was, had left her shattered, not unified. It was a premature intimacy that had only deepened her mistrust, transforming their bond into a profound, terrifying burden. The immediate aftermath of the forced merging in the resonant chambers was a maelstrom of unspoken tension. Zalara moved with a rigid precision, her internal light fluctuating between a furious crimson and a desolate gray. The accidental physical manifestation of their bond, the overwhelming surge of raw energy, had fundamentally altered her perception of him and of herself. She saw him now as a walking violation of her lineage, a living testament to an impurity she couldn't excise. You will remain in the Archon's personal chambers, she commanded, her voice cold and distant, as they exited the resonant chambers. Her words, clipped and formal, formed a stark contrast to the emotional maelstrom he knew raged within her. They are warded against the Shadow Weaver's influence. You will study the ancient scrolls, familiarizing yourself with Zelani customs and the history of the core. He walked beside her, the glowing bond mark on his wrist thrumming with a silent accusation. He could feel her raw distaste, her profound rejection. So, I'm grounded? Like a bad kid? He muttered, the dry humor failing to mask his hurt. She glanced at him, her multifaceted eyes devoid of warmth. You are contained for the purity of the core and for my own honor. The word honor was spat out like a curse. The bond, it is a burden, a necessary evil, to repel the Groll and the Shadow Weavers, but it does not signify acceptance. He stopped, forcing her to halt with him. I didn't ask for this any more than you did, but we're in it. We're bonded. And if you think I'm just going to sit there and let you treat me like a biohazard, you've got another thing coming. My unrefined human brain just saved your entire cultural legacy, and I didn't get any manual for alien soul merging. So maybe cut me some slack. Her crest flared, a rapid pulse of emerald and crimson. Slack? You speak of slack when my very essence has been polluted by your chaotic presence? When the core itself has twisted our sacred bond into something abhorrent? Abhorrent? He echoed, his voice rising. I felt it too, Zalara. It wasn't just my chaotic presence. It was something profound. Something about us, about how we're supposed to work together. He wasn't sure what he was saying, only that he couldn't let her dismiss what had happened, not when it had shaken him to his core. She recoiled, as if he had struck her, her multifaceted eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fury. Do not presume to understand. You are an outsider. Your species has no concept of the sacred purity of bloodlines, of the ancestral resonance that binds us to the core. You have no concept of the grief I carry, the duty I bear to my people. This bond, it is a desecration, a stain upon my very being. She looked down at her glowing bond mark, her jaw clenched, her whole body trembling with a suppressed agony. My dreams were of duty, of honor, of protecting my people from the Shadow Weavers, not of this. He watched her, a strange mix of sympathy and frustration rising within him. He'd seen her grief, knew the depth of it, but this profound disgust, this self-loathing, was something new. He understood her fear of impurity, but it felt so alien, so deeply ingrained, and yet she was still fighting, still struggling with a profound sense of cultural betrayal. Then we fight them, he said, his voice low, steady. The shadow weavers. We fight them together. Because if they're feeding off the core, if they're twisting your history, then this bond, this abhorrent thing, is the only weapon we've got. And maybe, just maybe, it's exactly what the core intended. He saw a flicker of something in her eyes then, a brief spark of consideration, quickly extinguished. But it was there, a tiny crack in the ice. The Archon's personal chambers, a circular room adorned with shimmering tapestries depicting Zaylani history, became Ethan's uneasy sanctuary. He sat cross-legged on a low cushion, surrounded by glowing data scrolls, their ancient script a confusing tangle of symbols. Zalara moved through the room with a distant grace, a constant, luminous presence. She hadn't left him since their emergence from the resonant chambers, a subtle guard, a constant reminder of their unwanted bond. She was still reeling from the forced intimacy, her internal light a dull, almost sorrowful azure. He cleared his throat. So, these shadow weavers, are they like actual shadows or just bad guys with a dramatic name? Zalara paused, her multifaceted eyes fixing on him. They are a splinter sect of the Archon priesthood. They believe that true resonance can only be achieved through the consumption of all knowledge, all history, even the darkest truths. They interpret the core's will as a command to absorb, not to preserve. Her voice, though still cool, held a flicker of her earlier fury. They sought to use the Gruul to trigger the core guardian bond, intending to place one of their own within its ritual. You, human, were an unforeseen variable. So, I'm the wrench in their grand evil scheme, he mused. Always knew I had a knack for messing things up. Your presence here is a disruption to their prophecy, she corrected, her voice precise. They will seek to neutralize your bond, either by severing your connection to the core's resonance or by corrupting it. They believe your chaos will be easily turned to their purpose. My chaos? He grinned faintly. They underestimate the sheer stubbornness of an earthbound human. He looked at the bond mark on his wrist, now pulsing with a steady, reassuring light. It was still there, undeniable. So, how do we fight them? Do we just resonate them into submission? Zalara finally sat, not on a cushion, but on a low, carved stone bench, her posture rigid. The core guardianship is a symbiotic bond. It grants enhanced abilities in defense of the archive. The ancestral weapon, she gestured to the glowing blade that now rested on a ceremonial stand in the center of the chamber, is merely a conduit. The true power lies in our shared resonance, our unity. But our unity is unrefined. He noticed a subtle shift in her language, the transition from your chaos to our unity. A small, almost imperceptible crack in her meticulously constructed wall. Right. Unrefined. So, you gotta whip me into shape, teach me how to resonate properly. Precisely, she agreed, though her voice remained flat. The process will require deep meditation, shared thought exercises, and an understanding of the core's true purpose. You must learn to shed your emotional projections and embrace a detached, analytical approach to the core's resonance. He raised an eyebrow. Detached? After what just happened in the resonant chambers? I don't think detached is in my vocabulary anymore, Zalara. That was a full-body experience. He met her gaze, his own eyes holding a frank, unwavering intensity. We felt it, both of us. The core amplified something real between us. You can call it abhorrent all you want, but it was powerful, and maybe that's what the core needs. Not just pure logic, but something more, something human. Her internal light flared, a brief, violent pulse of crimson. Your interpretations are irrelevant, she snapped, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. The core demands clarity, not chaos. My ancestors would be dishonored by such sentiment. Your ancestors are long gone, he retorted, his voice calm, yet firm, and they didn't have to deal with a bunch of cultists trying to rewrite history. Maybe they need a little chaos, a little human spark. Maybe that's why the core picked me, not some Zaylani with a perfectly pure bloodline. The tension in the room was palpable, a live wire buzzing between them. She was furious, offended, but he had planted a seed of doubt, a different perspective on their shared destiny. And he saw it, a flicker of something in her eyes, a dawning realization that perhaps, just perhaps, his chaos was not a weakness, but a strength the core needed. The following days were a slow, arduous process of forced intimacy. Ethan, still confined to the Archon's chambers, found himself constantly under Zylara's scrutinizing gaze. She subjected him to rigorous resonance exercises, which mostly involved sitting opposite her, trying to quiet his busy human mind and connect with the subtle vibrations of the core. It was excruciating. He felt her focused intelligence, her sharp intellect, her immense well of suppressed grief, but the spiritual merging she sought remained elusive. "You are distracted," Zylara stated, her voice a precise whisper, during one such exercise. Her tendrils pulsed, a calm, steady blue, a stark contrast to his own internal chaos. "Your mind wanders. I detect images of pizza and a squid with a top hat. These are not conducive to core alignment. It's called an imagination," he mumbled, frustrated. "And it's how I stay sane when I'm being forced to spiritually synchronize with an alien who thinks my dreams are a national security threat." She exhaled slowly, a sound like rustling dry leaves. "Your species is inefficient. Your mental energy is scattered. Your emotions uncontained. How can you hope to defend the core if your own internal landscape is so unkempt?" "My internal landscape is a vibrant, chaotic ecosystem." "Thank you very much," he retorted, a spark of his usual humor returning. "It's got weeds, sure, but it's also got wildflowers. And sometimes, the weeds actually make the flowers look better." She paused, then turned away, her back to him, facing the glowing ancestral weapon. "The Shadow Weavers understand nothing of wildflowers, only of consumption. Their ritual is a perverse reflection of the core guardianship. They seek to drain the core, not nourish it." Her voice, usually so controlled, held a new, raw edge. "They are close. I feel their resonance, like a disease within the very fabric of the archive." He looked at her, truly seeing the burden on her slender shoulders. "So if they're coming, if they're a disease, then maybe a little chaos is exactly what the doctor ordered. Maybe my uncontained emotions are what's needed to break their rigid, consuming logic." He rose, walking to stand beside her, close enough to feel the subtle warmth radiating from her. "Maybe the core didn't pick me by accident. Maybe it knew you needed someone who doesn't think like you. Someone who won't just follow the ancient texts, but can improvise, can fight dirty." She remained silent for a long moment, then slowly turned her head, her multifaceted eyes meeting his. He saw the flicker of something new there, not acceptance, not even understanding, but a reluctant contemplation. "Your species, you adapt," she murmured, almost to herself. "You survive. Even in environments not designed for you." Perhaps, the core recognized. A klaxon wailed then, not the same disorienting shriek as before, but a deep, mournful groan that resonated through the very stone of the towers. The archival lights flickered, this time not from the growl, but from internal sabotage. "The Shadow Weavers," Zalara whispered, her hand instinctively going to the ancestral weapon. "They have reached the inner sanctums. They mean to seize the core." Now, the moment of hesitant connection was shattered, replaced by the grim reality of battle. Their uneasy alliance, their forced bond, was about to be put to the ultimate test. The ancient texts, her rigid logic, his chaotic resilience, they would all need to work together, or everything would fall. The groan of the klaxon deepened into a sustained, ominous thrum, echoing the encroaching darkness. The Archon's chambers, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. Zylara, moved with an urgent, renewed purpose, pulling on her ceremonial battle raiment, a dark, flexible material that shimmered with an inner light, accentuating the taut lines of her body. The ancestral weapon, previously on its stand, now pulsed with a fierce blue energy, ready for her grasp. They will attempt to access the primary data nexus, she explained, her voice sharp with tactical precision. It is located beneath the Archon's council chamber. The path of resonance is guarded by ancient protocols, but the Shadow Weavers possess a corrupt key. She indicated the glowing bond mark on her arm, now vibrant with urgency. Our combined resonance is the only counter. We must move. Ethan nodded, pulling on his own worn utility jacket, the multi-tool a familiar weight at his hip. Lead the way. Just try not to get me into another accidental intimacy scenario unless it's strictly necessary for survival. My nervous system can only take so much. A faint, almost imperceptible flicker of her internal light pulsed with something akin to amusement. Your nervous system will be tested beyond your current comprehension, human, she stated, her voice flat, yet with a trace of something new. The path of resonance demands absolute synchronicity. Our bond is our weapon. They moved with surprising speed. Zalara's familiarity with the winding passages a stark contrast to Ethan's more stumbling movements. The archival towers were now alive with a low, predatory hum, the sound of the Shadow Weaver's dark resonance. They encountered pockets of resistance, Xiolani guards, dedicated Archon loyalists, fighting bravely but overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and dark power of the Shadow Weavers. As they moved through a crumbling corridor, a section of the ceiling gave way, sending a cascade of ancient debris crashing down. Ethan reacted instantly, throwing himself forward, shielding Xyla with his body. The impact sent a jolt up his arm, but he absorbed the brunt of it, the larger mass of his human frame taking the hit. "Are you all right?" he grunted, pushing himself off her. Zalara, surprised by his protective actions, stared at him, her multifaceted eyes wide. "You shielded me." Her crest pulsed with a disoriented light. "Your species' self-preservation protocols are illogical in such a situation. Your physical form is less resilient. It's called instinct, Zalara," he said, a small wry smile touching his lips. "And sometimes, illogical is exactly what you need. Besides, what's a little falling rock between bonded guardians?" She stood, her gaze lingering on him. And he saw it then, a flicker of something new, a nascent understanding, a softening of her rigid demeanor. Not acceptance, not yet, but a crack in the ice. They reached the path of resonance, a long, narrow bridge spanning a dizzying chasm, its surface pulsating with erratic energy. At the far end, silhouetted against the glowing nexus beyond, stood a phalanx of shadow weavers, their robes dark, their crests glowing with a malevolent, consuming red. At their head stood a figure of immense, cold power, the false prophet king, whose resonance pulsed with a corrupting hunger. "They intend to sever the primary energy flow, isolating the core," Solara whispered, her hand tightening on the ancestral weapon. "Then they will initiate the full absorption ritual. We must cross the bridge." Ethan looked at the chasm, the pulsing energy field and the array of enemies. He felt a surge of cold dread, but also a fierce determination. They were bonded, forged by fate, by chaos, and by the desperate needs of an ancient core. "Let's give them some chaos," he said, and for the first time, Solara looked at him, not with disdain, but with a shared, resolute fire in her multifaceted eyes. Their bond mark on his wrist throbbed with a renewed vital force. The path of resonance pulsed erratically beneath their feet, a bridge of pure energy shimmering over an abyss that seemed to swallow all light. The false prophet king, his dark robes rippling with absorbed energy, stood at the far end, flanked by his shadow weavers. His resonance was a nauseating hum, a corrupt version of the core's own vibrational frequency, designed to unravel and consume. "The resonance of the path will weaken you, human," Zalara stated, her voice now a low, determined thrum. "It is tuned to Zalani physiology. Your bond will protect you, but your unaligned mind will suffer." "My mind's been suffering since I landed here," Ethan muttered, taking a deep breath. "What's a little more existential dread?" As they stepped onto the path, The glowing bond marks on their wrists flared, connecting not just visually, but with a deep internal thrum that resonated through his entire being. He felt Zalara's presence, not just beside him, but within him. A constant, unwavering clarity. Her strategic mind, previously a foreign, confusing landscape, was now a navigable map within his own consciousness. He felt her determination, her unwavering focus, her deep-seated pain. He was no longer just experiencing her emotions. He was sharing her perception, a true empathy-based memory, merging that continued beyond the ritual. The Shadow Weavers began their attack, not with physical blows, but with waves of disorienting resonance, twisting images, and suffocating fear. Ethan felt a sudden, dizzying onslaught of his deepest anxieties, the crushing emptiness of space, the faces of his lost crew, the chilling certainty of his own insignificance in this vast alien universe. He stumbled, his mind reeling, but Xylara was there, her presence within him like an anchor. Her mind, perfectly aligned, filtered the onslaught, pushing back with a counter-resonance of purity and unwavering resolve. Focus, human, her thought echoed, clear and strong within his own mind. This is their deception. Resist the decay. He dug deep, drawing on his own stubborn resilience. You think you can break me with bad memories? He spat, forcing himself to move forward. I've had worse hangovers. The humor, though forced, seemed to resonate, not just with him, but with Celera's presence. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in her own internal resonance, a faint ripple of something like admiration. The false prophet king, seeing their continued advance, scoffed. A human, bound to an archon. The core has made a grave error. Your union is a weakness, Xylara, a perversion. He raised his hands, and the energy from the nexus intensified, twisting into dark, writhing tendrils that lashed out at them. Xylara brought up the ancestral weapon. Its glowing blade, an extension of her own will, deflected the corrupted energy, but the sheer force of the king's attack was immense. She swayed, her internal light flickering. We must synchronize our power, she thought, her voice strained. My energy alone is insufficient. Your chaos, combine it with my precision. We must amplify the bond. Ethan nodded, understanding. He reached out, not physically but with his core essence, merging his raw, untamed energy with her disciplined, focused power. The bond mark on his wrist flared, and he felt a surge of strength, a profound sense of unity. Their shared resonance, a blend of ancient Saklani purity and human resilience, surged forward, an unstoppable wave of pure, living energy. Saklara channeled it through the ancestral weapon, a brilliant beam of blue-green light erupting from the blade, slamming into the false prophet king. He shrieked, a sound of pure agony, his dark resonance crumbling under the combined force. He stumbled back, his form flickering, before collapsing, his robes dissolving into dust. The Shadow Weavers, deprived of their leader, panicked, their dark resonance unraveling. The path of resonance stabilized, its light returning to a steady, pure hum. They had done it, together. Their core resonance, perfectly synchronized by desperation and the unexpected surge of their ritual bond, had defeated a force that had crippled the Xylani for centuries. The climax had passed, the immediate threat neutralized, but the victory felt bittersweet, for the bond forged in conflict was now an undeniable reality, a sacred duty that bound them together for life. And in the quiet aftermath, the question hung unspoken between them. What now, for the human and the alien inextricably linked by destiny? The silence in the now stable path of resonance was profound, broken only by the hum of the energy bridge and their own ragged breaths. The Shadow Weavers were scattered, their leader disintegrated, their dark resonance purged from the immediate vicinity of the core. The archive was safe, for now. Ethan and Xylara stood, still connected by their bond marks, their hands now gently touching, the residual energy of their combined resonance tingling between them. Xylara's internal light, previously so agitated, now glowed with a calm, steady brilliance. Her multifaceted eyes, no longer filled with a profound sense of cultural violation, held a newfound, almost awed understanding. She looked at him, truly looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. "You're chaos," she murmured, her voice soft. It was not a weakness. It was a catalyst. My precision, combined with your resilience, it created a resonance unlike any in Zelani history. He managed a weak smile. "Told you, wildflowers." He was exhausted, exhilarated, and still slightly bewildered by the sheer power they had channeled. The lingering warmth of their combined resonance felt like a profound secret shared, a silent confession of a bond deeper than either of them had anticipated. The Archons, having cautiously emerged from the Archon's council chamber, approached, their faces a mixture of relief and solemn awe. The elder Archon stepped forward, his crest glowing with profound respect. "Archon Zylara, Guardian Ethan, you have purged the Shadow Weavers. You have preserved the core. The bond of core guardianship has revealed its true purpose." He bowed his head, a gesture of deep reverence. The core foresaw this union. The human element was not a flaw, but a necessary innovation. "You are more than guardians. You are the bridge between worlds." Zylara's tendrils pulsed, a kaleidoscope of soft, shifting colors, acceptance, awe, and a glimmer of something else. Her gaze returned to Ethan, her eyes searching his. The ancient texts, they spoke of a resonance beyond logic, a bond forged in alien fire. I interpreted it as metaphorical, but it was literal. Your species' capacity for illogical attachments, it has a purpose beyond my previous comprehension. She reached out, her cool digits gently tracing the bond mark on his wrist. "It binds us, truly." He felt the touch, not as a duty, but as a profound connection. "Yeah," he said, his voice husky. "Truly, for life, apparently." He still couldn't quite believe it. A human, bonded to an alien priestess, destined to protect an ancient core. His life, which had been about survival, had now become about something infinitely larger. "Our duty now is to rebuild," Zelara stated, her voice regaining some of its formal tone, but with a subtle softening. "To heal the fractured arcanate, to teach the Zelani that pure resonance can incorporate the unexpected. Your ways, human, will become part of our future." She looked at him, a flicker of that earlier amusement returning to her eyes. "Perhaps even your pizza will find a place in our dietary records." He chuckled, a genuine, relieved sound. "Might take some getting used to. But hey, I'm a patient guy, and I've got a lifetime to try and convince you that my dream journal was mostly just brain farts." She tilted her head, her internal light shimmering. "Perhaps, but our resonance has revealed a deeper truth. Your dream journal, it was not just brain static. It was a reflection of a core need, a need for connection, a need for companionship, a need for companionship, a need the core itself recognized in you and found compatible with my own buried longings." He stared, surprised. He'd seen her grief, her duty, her trauma, but buried longings? That was new, that was raw. He saw the faint blush of her internal light, the subtle way her tendrils curled. It was a confession, whispered not just by words but by the very essence of her being. Their shared trauma, their desperate battle, and the profound accidental intimacy of their ritual bond had stripped away all pretenses. They were two broken souls, now irrevocably intertwined, facing an unknown future, but no longer alone. Their bond was not just a duty, it was a destiny, a quiet, hopeful promise of a connection that defied all logic, all culture, all expectation.